This is BBC London 94.9, Danny Baker's Breakfast Show, weekday mornings from 6.
Good morning, everyone. Time is Neil in Sidcup, and Stuart Maconie is good enough to be with us, and we were just talking off the air about one of our subjects this morning, people with two voices, and we've agreed, of course, Elton John has the two voices. Well, Elton probably has about 4 or 5, but he's best known, of course, for his regular Elton John voice, which is quite close to Danny Kelly sometimes, and he also has his it's a little bit fun, yeah, voice. He does the skating all over America, but of course, long-time listeners of the show will know he's also a Rasta man, a true-born African. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Elton John. Ladies and gentlemen, nothing if not from the heart of Trenchtown. Here we go.
Living on prepaid tickets, water in the milk from the hole in the roof where the rain came through.
Where the rain came through. Lordy, lordy, it's Elton John. Good morning, everyone. We're doing a poetry, rolling poetry show this morning. It's Wednesday, and what are your words worth? Thank you very much indeed. We've named one laureate between 6 and 6:30. I'll bring you, before the end of the show, all the poems that have brought these titles to their authors. The last 2 half hours have been, Here's Mark with the Sport, we're bringing the winner of that, and before that, Serving Cake to Wolfgang. Very competitive half hour. Got to come up with a new subject. What's the matter?
Well, we've had people are really inspired by Serving Cake to Wolfgang.
Serving Cake to Wolfgang, it has took off rather better than I hoped. Yeah.
But we got loads in for Mark with the Sport as well, okay, with notes from the 19-year-olds as to what is meant to rhyme. Chalk in the footy, a try in the rugger. In cricket, a runnel come from Mr. O'Donnell. An 8 on the water and bad on the court. Here's Mark with the Sport.
I'm liking that. He's unspringing the rhymes again. He's unspringing the rhymes.
And O'Donnell.
What about this one? Here's Mark with the Sport. The cricketer caught the ball. They go on the all-weather track. We'll be back after this.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. He's put together the greatest. For this half an hour, if I might, for this half an hour, the subject under discussion is cider with roadies. Cider with roadies. That is the name, of course, of Stuart Maconie's. I think is it an autobiography?
I wouldn't.
Is it a memoir?
I'd like to. Yeah. When I just that word memoir, I became comfortable about it, because autobiography, I thought, that's for that fella who got run out of Georgia, isn't it? And Nelson Mandela and people.
But you're happy with memoir?
I'm happy with memoir.
A reminiscence?
Stroll down the leafy boulevards of memory lane. Autobiography, I'm always very uncomfortable with, because
you've taken the elements of your life thus far and shot them through the prism of your off-kilter microscope. How about that?
Yeah. In fact, I even prefer the phrase Hornby-esque memoir.
That's exactly what it is. Anyway, it's called Cider with Roadies, and that is your subject for the next half an hour to become the laureate of the much prized spot, 8 to 8:30. The subject under discussion is cider with roadies. You must have wrestled with that for a while. Thought, dare I call it cider with roadies?
Far from it, Dan. It's quite the opposite. When someone suggested there might be mileage in this Hornby-esque memoir, I thought, oh no, I don't know. There's a lot of that nostalgia and Hornby-esque memoiring about, isn't there? Yeah. And then when I thought of cider with roadies, I thought, that's a good title, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Come on, and it's perfect. But I've been doing the roundel. What did roundel be the word? Roundelay, even of local radio.
Yes.
You do 150 in a day, BBC local radio, and I think it might have been a gentleman from Shropshire. If I've maligned that man, I'm sorry, but he said to me, what's the significance, Stuart, of the title? I said, well, it's kind of about me becoming a music journalist and spending time with bands and things like that, and, the play on words. Play on words? In what sense? I said, On Cider with Rosie by Laurie Lee. What's that then?
No, you're kidding.
I'm kidding you
Radio
not.
Shropshire, was it?
I hope it was now. What's that then? I said, well, it's quite a famous book. He's like, and it almost was like the old Python, not round here it ain't, kind of thing.
Well, the thing is, and I know it'll behoove this, but people tried to bracket us with local radio, BBC, and of course we're nothing of the sort. This is BBC London, and Palookaville, they get the same budget as us, which irks every single person round here. And when I stand up at the next AGM, if I might, I'm going to cite that as a reason why we should cut ourselves free of these losers, boozers, and jacuzzi goozers. It's about your time as a rock journalist.
Well, it's kind of about being, as Jim yourself must be, a pop-obsessed kid who gets the keys to the sweet shop, as it were.
There is that.
Who from the age of 11, having spent every Wednesday morning covered in ink from having read Sounds, NME and Melody Maker.
Oh, no, I never did. I only read it in me. I'm afraid.
I had to have the set. I had to have the full set, if only to sneeringly look at Melody Makers.
There is that. I suppose I did.
If only to look at Melody Makers' 20-page interviews with the Albion Band or whatever, and think, this isn't punk rock.
The Albion Band.
But yeah, and then just in that kind of precocious, he likes pop music, he likes English, therefore he should become a music journalist kind of way.
Who would have been the first band that you ever stuck in a room with and said, go on, talk to them? Who was the first band you were ever...
Well, unless you count the band who weren't the Bluebells, who I interviewed for a college fanzine, and after the end of the 15-20 minutes and me saying... So, things are looking pretty good for the Bluebells at the moment. I guess it vindicates that idea that classic pop never goes out of fashion. I thought a good question. They said, we're not the Bluebells, we're the support band.
Oh, you spent 20 minutes
20 minutes to support band. And at that point, with the, charm and grace that I hope I've acquired, you'd try and say, I knew that. I knew you were the support band. And going, but I just sort of went, are you the support band? I'm sorry, this has been a mistake, and left the room.
And that band went on to be, who knows?
Really, genuinely, the first band for the NME were all about Eve. Do you remember the Silk-like Julianne Regan? And that went surprisingly well, except I didn't have the little tape machine that all journalists should have, so I had to take a ghetto blaster.
You job, man.
And if they thought it was hilarious, they had the great courtesy not to laugh.
Yeah.
So,
all about Eve. Where did they get any side from? Of course they should have been flattered, of course.
Well, of course they should. And that's the thing, and nowadays they're only ever remembered for the fact that they screwed up big time on Top of the Pops, and there's a thing where she's not singing, so they're like, the thing everyone knows one thing about. Jeff Capes keeps budgies, Sarah Miles drinks all that, and all about Eve mucked up on Top of the Pops, but I always go, hey, no, they were nice to me, and
you never forget the first band you ever actually interviewed, and I've got a top of the shop. It was Blondie.
Was it?
Yes, Blondie on the tour with Talking Heads and the Cortinas, and they came to London to the Sniffing Glue offices. Technically, I suppose it would have been Johnny Moped, but they just hang around. And they came to the Sniffing Glue offices. They sought us out. Offices for,
Should we review those three bands on that tour again? Blondie, the Talking Heads, and the Cortinas. It's like one of these names is not like the other.
And it was in Bristol where the Cortinas, came from. So the other, nobody had heard of.
So they were the big band.
Nobody had heard of the other two. And Blondie said, "Look, we're riding down. Do you want to ride with us?" And I did a little piece for the magazine in the back with Blondie, if you don't mind. From little beginnings, they signed an album for us and all that. God knows where it is now, but
eBay. I'm saying it's eBay.
Would be.
Yeah.
So there it is. You see, started with All About Eve. Who was that for?
That was for the New Musical Express, because even though I read everything, I had no intention of ever writing for anyone except the NME. That was there was no point playing for it.
How did you get the job then?
I sent in an unsolicited review. Neil Spencer, a gentleman...
I do a good impression of him.
You do a very excellent impression of him. And I'd seen him on a television documentary when I was in my early 20s saying... We read everything that comes into this office. We read all the unsolicited reviews, which is just absolute rubbish.
Nonsense. It's like the poll, the voting for the best band, best guitarist.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Made up.
Absolutely. Yeah. No chance at all that Queen were ever going to win that, I'm afraid, in the year of the...
But I'd heard him say this. We read everything that comes in, and he said 99.9% of it is rubbish, so don't bother, which is kind of like a gauntlet thrown down.
Yeah.
I sent in this unsolicited review of Edwin Collins, then in the doldrums of his career, and fortunately there's a guy called James Brown who then sent over the live desk, and he was a bit of a live wire, and he by return of post said, we need someone in the Northwest, do you want to have a go? So that was it, and then before I knew it, I was with All About Eve.
I think now it's almost been turned on its head in terms of there used to be the thing about once you're 22 you shouldn't be writing for a pop magazine. Well, now it seems like you can't write about poems unless you're over 40. It does seem like that to me. It seems like your Mojos, your Uncuts and all of that seem to have the worth.
That's right, yeah. Well, I guess I don't know, they're getting too sociological. I guess as the medium gets older, the foot soldiers have to get older with it, don't they?
Yeah, but you'd have thought, and always use that expression, the hip young gunslingers. But there's no currency in being a hip young gunslinger and writing about either the Darkness or Slipknot or whatever.
What did you do before you started writing for the NME?
See, that I always thought stood me in good stead. I was quite old. I mean, I was then it was still a hip young gunslingers kind of game, and I was about 24, so I was really an old man. But I'd worked in a cotton mill. I'd taught.
Worked in a cotton mill?
I worked in a cotton mill. I know people always think it's a comment.
It is.
It's like with my accent. You worked in a cotton mill.
Everybody works in a
cap.
Well, when we come back, we'll examine this further. And then we'll try and make this CV stand up. I don't think you can get away with it far too long. Where you go, Monica? So Van Morrison walks into Bono's, what is it, New Year's Eve party? What was it?
Yeah, Van Morrison turns up at Bono's New Year's Eve party, apparently, and there's gentlemen in satin bomber jackets with headsets manning the velvet rope. And Van just turns up in his flat cap and car coat, stands there for a while. The guy doesn't know what to do, and eventually just turns around to the assembled rock glitterati inside and says, "Anyone order a mini cab?" Assuming that the resolutely downbeat and unglamorous Van in the cap and scarf.
You've earned your pound there. Everyone who comes in who's even vaguely connected with the music business must give us a Van Morrison story. We're going to hear about those wonderful and perhaps lost trips now that entice people like Stuart and myself into the music journalism game. The trips used to get abroad. We'll hear about those in a minute. What you got there, Ryan?
Well, we've got loads of poems coming in for Here's Mark with the Sport. And this one is from Kirsty in Malaga. She says, here's Mark with the Sport, waking me up gently with his warm and lilting voice, interrupted only by the witterings of sportsmen and nonsensical managers. Finally, a sports report to listen to. But what does it all mean?
Is that blank?
Yeah.
Is that what they call blank verse? Is that concrete? I can't remember. Is that concrete or blank? I think it's concrete, is it? I think it's concrete.
Here's one from Gillian in Gray's Inn Road. Says, here's Mark with the Sport, Danny said with a snort, for he knew what he was to say. Victorious was West Ham, but Millwall has gone down and bubbles were blowing all day.
No, this is more like it. This is more like it. We say Newcastle, he says Newcastle. Some woman in Nunhead loves him to talk. His Mark the Sport. That's it. She's got that going on.
You got the old Newcastle.
Oh, it's from Mark Day-Lewis. That was from. And just quickly before we return, Stuart Maconie is here because he's got his memoir. Memoir outside with Roadies. Here's Mark with the Sport. Those wonderful clips of Ranieri. Arsenal, they won 2-0 with more goals from Thierry. Don't you just love it and adore it when Arsene never saw it? It must be Terry and Hainault, for that was Mark with the Sport. No, that's no good. So we will be announcing a winner of those in a brand new category, which is Cider with Roadies. That is, you can take that any way you want, and please give us even your haiku on Cider with Roadies, please. 0207 224 2000 to be named the 8 o'clock to 8:30 laureate of the show. Whenever we need something in verse, it'll be you we turn to. You can text us 07786 200 949. The subject is Cider with Roadies. So what kind of trips have you had over the years, Stuart?
Oh, well, ranging from the I'm trying to think of the most glamorous ones now.
You weren't on that, what are they called? They're not the IMF. What were they called? The
EMF.
KLF. No, KLF.
Oh, the KLF.
That one where they gave everyone $2,000 or something, wasn't it?
No, I wasn't on that, sadly. I did spend 4 days on the French motorway system with Napalm Death.
Wow.
Which is
now that is a title for a book, not just Cider with Roadies.
Well, you see, the idea of that was my idea. I said, look, because I went through a very brief fixation with that kind of music, and I said, look, they can't be like they appear to be. They'll be cravat-wearing Wildian wits, you know, and it'll be a funny piece, you know, behind the noise, you know, that kind of thing. Of course not, no. The members of Napalm Death, every bit as nasty and brutish and short as their music. Horrible. 4 days of these...
on the French motorway?
French motorway system that ended up with the photographer vomiting on the hard shoulder, and they also got out and took pictures of him.
Of course, yeah.
So by then we'd reached the kind of stage of whatever the opposite of entente.
But honestly, the sweetest gig you've had, but, you know, I had many a Los Angeles trip for groups as slight as Shalimar. 10 days in LA for Shalimar.
I remember you. You've got a fantastic Beach Boys.
Yeah,
on the beach.
On the beach, thank you very much. Out in while I was waiting for Michael Jackson to say yes to a photo shoot. Don't mind staying on for another fortnight, dear. Got George Duke and the Beach Boys if you want to talk to them. I'll take the second option, thank you very much indeed. But you never got any of those really sweet
I got
ones.
things like that. I did it at Tokyo. We got something very similar to that. I was in Tokyo with who was I in Tokyo with? No, Blur. I was in Tokyo with Blur. They were going home, and it was the Stone Roses are coming and someone else are coming, and can you stay on for like a week? And it was like, yeah, well, I'm sure I can rearrange my schedule to accommodate.
Children will gasp if there was ever a time of such employment, isn't it?
So if Napalm Death were just like their songs in real life, was Morrissey really the Wildian wit that his lyrics would suggest?
Morrissey's exactly like that, and people used to say, because I loved Morrissey, and I think I became, to be honest, his pet journalist for a little while, and people used to say to me, well, he rehearses his answers. That's why he's so good. If he does, good work, fella. That's better than going, we're just playing music for ourselves. If other people like it, it's a bonus. You know, if he rehearses them, fine. He's putting in the necessary homework. But I would go to him quite deliberately with a book of really quite random questions. You know, what do you think about the fireman's strike or whatever? And he'd always still come up with something beautiful to say. We were sitting on the grass outside his house once. I don't know if this is in the book or not. And a young American backpacker came by and said, hey, you guys, can you tell me where the Dublin Castle is? And he said, it's just down the road there. And she looked and went, my God, my God, it's him, isn't it? It's him, it's you, it's him. Looked at me for confirmation. It's him, isn't it? And he, with a little sidelong look at me, said, I'm not the man that you think I am. Which, of course, is a Smiths lyric. And I thought, he can't have known this would happen. Unless he's arranged this whole scenario. He's a very clever man indeed.
Amy is there thinking, that would... You walking along, just running into Morrissey.
Yeah.
How many times have you run that one in your head? Absolutely.
Many
And he quotes
times.
the lyric back at you.
Yeah.
Did you work, just coming round to it, and
Yes.
the self-regarding nonsense, but
Yes.
you worked alongside BBC London 94.9's own Danny Kelly, I take it, didn't you?
He was my boss. He was my, I don't know, he was my boss. I know, can you believe that? He was my, the first gig the first big trip I ever got, which was very quickly after I'd started working for the paper, about 3 or 4 days, I think, literally. I was teaching up in Skelmersdale, phone call comes through from the school secretary, who comes in while I'm teaching Marxist theory of the nuclear family. I was teaching sociology or something like that. Can you ring? There's a guy called James Brown on the phone. Can you ring him? I said, well, I'd love to wait. I'm teaching these kids, imparting them knowledge. He says he wants you to go to Seattle and interview Michael Hutchins. And I said, to their great credit, the kids said, go on, take the call, you know.
Yeah.
Took it anyway, and I
Like you were dithering.
pitched up at the NME and met Danny Kelly. He was, larger than life character.
Yeah.
And he said, well, normally, son, we'd give you like a press officer to go with you or something, but no one's going. And he said something like, I'd give you a few quid myself for the taxi, but I'm a bit short.
Yes.
So anyway, just keep the receipts, son, have a good time, kind of thing.
And you went to Seattle, yeah?
I went to Seattle to Michael Hutchins, and no press officer. Turned up at the first time in the States, turned up at the Four Seasons Hotel Seattle and thought, what do I do now? And thought, I'll wait in the lobby till I hear an Australian accent. And that's exactly what I had to do, waited.
Yeah.
And I heard someone come past saying, Cobber or good day. He turned out to be the tour manager, otherwise it was I was going to say baptism of fire, but it's not like working down a coal mine.
Exactly. No, it's one of the sweetest gigs, and I can barely believe, I fell on my feet into it myself.
Yeah.
But given that Ciderwood Roadies is a reminiscence about just these sort of things, come on, murder your darlings and give us what you consider to be the best anecdote in the book. What is?
My word, I don't know.
We're all sitting here with balloons of brandy. I've told my Michael Jackson stories. We've all come out with Morrissey stories, and then you think I've been keeping my powder dry.
No.
Here it is.
No, I will keep my. I'm trying to. I will not give away the best anecdote because, of course, I've forgotten it. I like to think that one of my most intriguing times was the Dusseldorf Leisure Centre with MC Hammer.
Ladies and gentlemen, go on.
4 minutes with them. No, I didn't get the 4 minutes. It was a junket. There were a great deal of us who got ever decreasing amounts of time, because you'll know yourself that the shorter the lifespan of the act, the more self-regarding their self-importance is. MC Hammer's career, the lifespan of a mayfly, and yet he thought he was the Beatles, the Stones, the Beach Boys.
Really? I had no idea he was nuts as that. Yeah.
So I'm ushered into a room, there's a flunky sitting behind me, and I thought, why is this guy sitting behind me? I'm giving the audience with the hammer, and then feel a tap on the shoulder. I turn around, and the guy's sitting back in his seat. Tap on the shoulder again. A few minutes later, I realised, like your driving test, when someone taps on the dashboard for emergency stop. This was my cue to stop. So I leave, and by the time I get out there, the guy from Time Out, Nick Cohen from Time Out, has just been told. I said, how are you getting on? He said, I've just been told I've got 4 minutes with him. 4 minutes. I said, that's not much, is it? He said, what am I going to do now? I suppose I could get him to boil an egg. Which he didn't put in his piece. I did, with the enemies.
Of course you originated it.
He didn't put that in the piece.
Well, my own, again, sometimes you think back on these dizzying stories, because it is the only way to spend a youth. I was in New York doing John Cale and Rod Stewart. Never wrote it up, strangely. It's a terrible liberty. Where the hell did I do it halfway? Never wrote it. Many pieces never wrote up. And when I was crossing Columbus Circle, 8 of my mates happened to come out and stay in the hotel room with us. All my all supporters didn't have much interest in rock music. The Freddie Laker Skytrain was on. So they all came out for 60 quid a time. And I'm crossing Columbus Circle. Oh, that'll be John Lennon coming towards me with his Yoko there. And the thing is, you're with your chaps who have got their tongues hanging out, been walking around New York, and I passed Lennon, and I thought, well, I can't... And I went behind, and this is when Lennon hadn't been heard of. It was during the, his down years, as they say. That's 78, and I've done been in the enemy about 6 weeks, and I ran after him, and I was babbling like a lunatic, saying, John, so how's it been going? He was going, yeah, fine, yeah, great, yeah, terrific. And I wrote every terrific, every fine, that's all he said. And cover the enemy, Lennon speaks, exclusive, Lennon speaks. No. Yes, they did, run a whole page on it. John, how you doing? Fine. So, just out then, yeah. And we didn't lie, Lennon did indeed speak to me.
My favourite unwritten story, though, Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Go on.
General election day 1992 story never ran. Thought I'll break the ice asking these multi-millionaire expats who've still got a vote here.
Yeah.
I said, have you voted, lads? Greg Lake says to me, yeah. And I said, who did you vote for? And he looked at me, I'll leave out a crucial word here. He said, who do you think we voted for, and I thought, good answer.
Did he?
Yeah,
Did
good
he
answer.
really?
With the old tax scenario, I fancy you've cast your vote for the Conservatives, haven't you?
Of course.
Who do you think we voted for?
A member of the Who now, of course. Craig Lake has joined the Who.
No.
I'm telling you.
When did that happen?
Breaking story, yeah. Craig Lake has joined the Who.
When did that happen?
Yeah, he's the bass player in the Who now. Here's Chris the Lizard. Now, Chris, is he on the phone, Chris? I'll probably bring you the backstory here, Stuart. All morning, Chris the Lizard has been trying to break into the poetry business. We were a little hard on him at 6:30, very hard on him.
Actually, we were brutal.
We made him the show's simpleton, which I knew was the wrong word, but I was talking live, Chris. What can I tell you? Since then, he's become the show's McGonagall, and his last poem was a great. He's going for cider with roadies. He hasn't done any work this morning because he's absolutely thunderstruck and horrified that we could have made him the show's simpleton. He knows he's better than that. He thinks he's not being given a good reading. Good morning again, Chris.
Morning again, Candyman.
I just say, I appreciate you being good enough to stick around and not turning up here with a pitchfork after the roasting you got for the initial stab. But the last one, as you heard, you know, we all gave you a small round of applause, patronised the hell out of you. We told you that that's better. Now, you've got one for cider with roadies, am I right?
Yeah, I think it's improving as I go as well.
Well, it's very good of you to take that. You could just stand your ground and say it's the reading I've been giving them. So tell us, what have you got?
Right. There once was a young girl called Jodie who got drunk.
Can I just say it's already bad?
It's already
It's in
said.
limerick form.
It's
It's already bad. He's gone back to his limerick.
yeah.
But anyway, again, off you go.
We'll go again. There once was a young girl called Jodie who got drunk as a skunk with a roadie. Though he couldn't abide her, the power of the cider ended up with a baby called Dodie.
No, hang on, let me think. Is it the simpleton music? Yes, it is. Chris, I'm saying the next one's going to be the one. That'll be the one. If you're wondering why we were doing cider with roadies there, it's because it is the title of the effervescent firework explosion that is Stuart Maconie's memoir of his years.
I've got another poetic example here. This is Paul from Romford who says, big green bogies,
I don't know.
fat old toadies, Doyle and Bodie, cider and roadies.
It's a form, I know, but
And that bogey, that's what we call an imperfect rhyme, isn't it? Bogey and roadie, there's something going wrong there.
He rhymes bogey with roadie. No wonder
But he's dead. If only we had another half an hour, we could talk about those terrible rock lyrics in full with Stuart Maconie. It is called Cider with Roadies. It is out on Thursday, and I should imagine if, you know...
In all good bookshops now, yeah.
Yeah, but it is all in all good bookshops now, but that kind of words have been in all good magazines for a very long time. Now they're gathered together. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Stuart. Thank you. Where you go, Monica?
On 94.9 FM, this is BBC London.